The bar was loud that Friday night. Music thumped through the walls, mixing with laughter, clinking glasses, and the occasional shout. The air smelled of fried food, spilled beer, and smoke from a few patrons who refused to give up their cigarettes. People leaned on the counters, crowded near the pool tables, and argued over dart scores or card games. In one corner, a group of bikers was gathered. Their leather jackets were worn and scuffed, patches showing the names of their clubs, some boasting bold claims. They laughed too loud, drank too fast, and carried an energy that demanded attention. At the other side of the bar, a woman walked in. She moved with calm confidence, steady and unhurried. Her clothes were simple, a dark shirt and jeans, but there was something about her posture that made heads turn, even if only slightly. She carried herself with an invisible weight, the kind that made people sense she was not someone to be trifled with. She didn't look for trouble. She didn't announce herself. She just wanted a quiet drink, a place to sit and relax after a long week. Her eyes scanned the room, taking in the energy without judgment. She noted the bikers' corner, the crowded tables, and a few regulars who nodded politely as she passed. Nothing fazed her. She found a stool at the far end of the bar, away from the commotion but close enough to watch it unfold. The bartender, a man with a friendly face and quick hands, gave her a polite nod. "Evening," he said. She nodded back, sliding onto the stool. He set down a clean glass in front of her. She ordered something simple, just a drink, not wanting anything flashy. She sipped slowly, appreciating the quiet moment. Her attention drifted between the crowd and the music, noticing small details others might miss. A man checking his phone nervously, a couple arguing softly near the dartboard, the way a child of a regular tried to sneak past the pool table unnoticed. The bikers were loud, their laughter sharp, filled with bravado. One of them, the largest of the group, seemed to take pleasure in provoking the room. He laughed at jokes no one else found funny, slapped shoulders with too much force, and stared at newcomers like they were obstacles in his path. People avoided him when possible, pretending to ignore his presence because they had learned long ago that he thrived on attention. Most of the patrons simply wanted to enjoy the night without trouble. The woman ignored them at first. She knew from experience that some people tested others to see their reactions. She didn't react to stares, didn't flinch at crude remarks tossed her way. She just kept sipping her drink, letting her calm energy act as a shield. But the biker noticed her. Perhaps it was her posture, or the way she didn't react like most did. Whatever it was, he saw a challenge, and challenges excited him. He leaned back in his chair, sneering slightly, and nudged the others. "Check her out," he said, his voice loud enough for some to hear. "She thinks she's better than us." Some of the other bikers laughed, some shrugged. They didn't know what she was capable of, and neither did he. She remained quiet, taking another slow sip, her gaze steady, not meeting his but not avoiding it either. She didn't give him the satisfaction of fear. In that moment, tension grew. The room seemed to notice. Even the music felt like it dipped slightly, as if the bar itself held its breath. Finally, he decided to act. He leaned across the table, towering over her without touching her yet, his expression daring her to respond. "What are you staring at?" he barked. His voice was rough, edged with alcohol and arrogance. Patrons nearby glanced over, some turning away quickly, knowing what was about to happen might escalate. She didn't flinch, didn't rise to the bait. She simply lifted her chin, keeping her expression neutral, her hands resting on the bar calmly. The biker's face twisted into a smirk, thinking he had her figured out. In one swift motion, he slapped her cheek. The sound echoed in the bar, drawing sharp gasps from those nearby. A few people shouted, some tried to intervene, but the biker waved them off. He was used to control, used to fear, and believed this gesture would intimidate her, make her submit to the room's unspoken hierarchy. But she didn't. She didn't cry out. She didn't flinch. She didn't yell or act surprised. Her eyes hardened, sharp and focused, a look that made even the biker hesitate. The room felt the shift. People stopped talking mid-sentence. Glasses paused mid-air, and the bartender leaned slightly forward, curious about how this would unfold. Everyone could sense that the woman in front of them was no ordinary patron, no ordinary person. She breathed calmly, slow and controlled, letting him see that his attempt to assert dominance had failed. She shifted slightly on her stool, her posture perfect, her presence commanding without a word. Some in the bar whispered among themselves. "Who is she?" one said quietly. "She's not scared," another replied. "No one stands like that after getting slapped." The air was tense, electric with anticipation, as the biker realized he might have underestimated her. She placed her hand lightly on the bar, feeling the solid surface, grounding herself. Then she spoke softly but with authority. Not a shout, not a scream, just a steady, calm voice. "That was unnecessary," she said. The words were simple, but they carried weight. There was no anger, no pleading, no uncertainty. Just clarity. Everyone in the bar noticed the tone, a tone that made even the biker pause. He was used to shouting over people, intimidating them into silence, but her voice didn't bend or break under pressure. It demanded attention simply by being steady. The biker laughed nervously, trying to cover his surprise with bravado. "Don't talk to me like that," he said. But there was a hesitation now, a crack in the armor he always showed. His friend shifted uncomfortably, sensing the balance of power had changed. Patrons watched with wide eyes. Some moved closer to witness what might come next. Others took a cautious step back. The bar had become a stage, and everyone in it was holding their breath. She didn't move aggressively, didn't threaten him. She simply sat, controlled and calm, a presence that spoke louder than words. It was clear to anyone watching that she had experience with conflict, experience with confrontation, and experience commanding respect without needing to raise her voice. She wasn't reacting emotionally. She was assessing, waiting, and making the biker realize that underestimating her was a mistake he would regret. The biker shifted in his seat, uneasy now. He had never seen this before. Usually people reacted with fear or anger, but she reacted with control. Her calmness was disarming. The room seemed to hum with tension. People whispered quietly, not wanting to interrupt but unable to look away. A few patrons pulled out their phones, thinking maybe this was a moment worth recording, though no one knew what would happen next. She finished her drink slowly, setting the glass down with care, her eyes never leaving his. Her movements were precise, deliberate. The biker fidgeted, realizing he could no longer dominate the room with gestures or intimidation. For the first time that night, he felt uncertain. He had challenged her, and now he was the one being measured, judged by someone who didn't need to prove anything. A hush fell over the bar. The music seemed quieter, the chatter faded, all eyes on the pair. The woman's presence, calm yet powerful, reminded everyone that strength wasn't always loud, that courage didn't need to shout, and that underestimating someone could lead to consequences far beyond what was expected. She didn't move to escalate the situation, didn't shout or attack. She simply existed in that space, controlled and self-assured, a living example of discipline and focus. The bartender watched closely, silently impressed. He had seen fights, arguments, and drunken bravado, but nothing like this. The patrons leaned in, some whispering questions about who she was, what she had done before, why she didn't flinch. Everyone could tell this was someone with a story, someone who had been trained to handle far worse than a drunken slap in a bar. The woman remained seated, calm, collected, and in control. She was a soldier, though no one in the bar yet knew it. Her posture, her gaze, her slow, deliberate movements all hinted at training, discipline, and experience. It was clear to those watching that this confrontation would end not with chaos, but with lessons learned. The biker had misjudged her, and the room knew it. He would not forget the woman who had faced him with such calm authority, and neither would anyone who witnessed the moment. As the tension hung in the air, the woman continued to sip her drink, composed and undisturbed. The biker's smirk faded slightly. He realized that whatever challenge he thought he had issued, it was now in his own hands to respond wisely, or risk further humiliation. Around them, the bar slowly returned to its usual hum, but eyes kept flicking back, silently narrating the story in real time, recording the energy of a woman who had turned a potentially violent moment into one of awe and respect. Even without words, she had communicated a message. Do not mistake silence for weakness. Do not mistake calm for fear. And never underestimate the presence of someone who is quietly, confidently in control of themselves. The bar was tense after the slap. People whispered to each other, unsure of what would happen next. Some thought the woman might shout. Some thought she might call for help. But she remained calm, her eyes steady, her posture unshaken. She had trained for situations far more dangerous than a drunk man's arrogance, and it showed. The biker, on the other hand, was growing. impatient. His smirk had faded, replaced with irritation. He leaned forward slightly, as if trying to provoke her into a reaction that would satisfy his pride. "You think you can just sit there and stare at me?" he barked, his voice loud enough to catch the attention of nearby patrons. A few heads turned, some stepping back, some leaning forward curiously. She didn't flinch. She didn't answer immediately. She simply looked at him, calm and assessing, as though measuring his intentions. Her silence was more powerful than any words she could have said. The biker's friends chuckled nervously, unsure whether to encourage him or intervene. They were used to seeing him dominate situations through intimidation, but this woman didn't respond the way anyone expected. She wasn't scared, and that threw him off balance. He had assumed her initial silence was fear, but now he realized he had misread her completely. "Hey," he shouted again, leaning closer. "I'm talking to you. Say something." She finally spoke, her voice calm but firm. "You shouldn't hit someone," she said simply. "It's unnecessary." The words were direct, without anger or accusation, yet full of authority. The biker blinked, surprised that she had spoken so plainly. He wasn't used to people standing up to him in a controlled way. Usually they either yelled back or cowered. Neither reaction would earn respect, but hers was different. For a moment, the biker hesitated. The bar felt quiet, everyone sensing the shift in power. Patrons watched closely, curious how this confrontation would unfold. Some whispered to each other, speculating about her background. Others simply stared, caught in the tension, unable to look away. The woman didn't raise her voice, didn't make sudden movements. She simply sat with confidence, her calmness commanding the space around her. The biker's irritation grew. He thought he could provoke her by touching her, by raising his voice, or by mocking her. He reached out to tap her shoulder. This time it was not a slap, but a gesture meant to assert dominance, to show the bar that he could still intimidate her. But she anticipated it. In one smooth motion, she caught his wrist, her grip firm but controlled. The biker froze for a moment, shocked at her speed and strength. The bar seemed to hold its breath. Patrons whispered and murmured, realizing that the woman was far more capable than anyone had imagined. She didn't raise her voice or act aggressively. She simply turned his hand slightly, twisting it behind him, not to hurt him but to make him understand that he was no longer in control. The biker struggled briefly, but the surprise and her strength made him falter. He realized he had misjudged her completely. "Let go," he barked, trying to free himself, but she held him firmly. Her tone was calm, but there was an unspoken message. She was in control, and she was not afraid. The other bikers watched nervously, unsure whether to step in or wait. The bar had gone silent except for the faint hum of the music in the background. Everyone could feel the tension, the kind that makes even the bravest hold their breath. She didn't shout, didn't make threats. She simply spoke clearly and confidently. "I suggest you leave me and this bar alone," she said. Her words carried weight because of how she said them. Calm, composed, and unwavering. The biker's friends exchanged nervous glances. They had never seen him confronted like this, and the way she handled him made them unsure of what to do next. The biker struggled for a few more seconds, then realized the futility of his actions. He let out a frustrated laugh, a little forced, and stepped back. His friends quickly followed, murmuring apologies and trying to regain composure. The bar slowly exhaled, relief washing over the patrons. The tension that had gripped the room began to fade, replaced by awe and curiosity. People started whispering among themselves. "Did you see that?" one said. "She didn't even scream or hit him, she just handled it." Another added, "You can tell she's trained." That was military-level control. Everyone was impressed, not just by her strength but by her composure. She had turned a potentially violent situation into one where respect was demanded, without raising her voice or escalating the conflict. The bartender, who had seen many fights over the years, shook his head slightly, impressed. He had witnessed aggression, drunken chaos, and arguments, but nothing like this. The woman's presence and control reminded him that true strength was often quiet, measured, and deliberate. It was not about yelling, pushing, or showing off. It was about knowing your own limits, assessing the situation, and acting decisively when necessary. The woman returned to her drink, calm and composed. Her hands were steady, her posture perfect. Patrons approached her cautiously, some asking questions quietly, others simply nodding in respect. She answered politely but didn't boast or seek attention. Her focus remained on herself, on maintaining calm and ensuring the bar stayed safe from further disruption. The biker and his friends lingered for a moment, embarrassed by their failed attempt at intimidation. They muttered excuses to each other, realizing they had underestimated someone they saw as just another patron. The woman didn't gloat, didn't mock them. She simply existed as she had before, calm, confident, and unshaken. Her actions had spoken louder than any words could have. People in the bar continued to whisper about what had happened. Some approached the bartender, asking for details or speculating about her background. Others simply stared, still processing the unexpected display of courage and control. The woman had left an impression that no one would forget that night. She had demonstrated that strength did not always have to be aggressive, that courage was often measured in quiet confidence, and that even the most intimidating individuals could be confronted without chaos if handled with skill and poise. As the night went on, the bar slowly returned to its usual rhythm. People resumed their conversations. The music seemed louder and laughter gradually filled the space again. But there was a different energy in the room now. Patrons walked with a little more respect, a little more awareness. They had witnessed someone who commanded respect without threatening violence. Someone who had taken control of a dangerous situation with intelligence, precision, and calm. The woman finished her drink, placing the glass carefully on the bar. She didn't need recognition or praise. She didn't need anyone to understand her background or training. She had handled the situation, protected herself, and maintained peace without unnecessary conflict. That was enough. Her presence alone had shifted the atmosphere of the bar, leaving a lesson for everyone present. Strength was measured not just in physicality, but in composure, intelligence, and the courage to act when necessary. The biker and his friends finally left, heads down, murmuring apologies that few heard. Their exit marked the end of the confrontation, but the story of what had happened spread quickly among the patrons. People told friends, shared the story online, and recounted the night in hushed tones. They spoke not of fear, not of anger, but of admiration for someone who had faced aggression calmly, decisively, and without unnecessary violence. The woman stayed a little longer, sipping her drink and observing the room. She remained aware, not because she expected another confrontation, but because she had trained herself to stay alert, to anticipate situations, and to act with precision. Her presence, calm and controlled, reminded everyone that true courage often goes unnoticed until tested. She had been tested, and she had passed without needing to raise her voice or prove anything beyond her competence. By the time she left, the bar had settled completely. Patrons returned to their drinks and conversations, some smiling quietly, others still discussing the incredible display they had witnessed. The woman walked out calmly, unnoticed by some, remembered vividly by others. The story of that night would linger, a reminder that appearances could be deceiving, that courage could be quiet, and that a single person's confidence and composure could change the entire energy of a room. The night outside was cool, the air sharp and refreshing. She walked down the street, each step steady and purposeful, leaving the bar behind but carrying the satisfaction of knowing she had handled the situation perfectly. She hadn't needed to shout or fight unnecessarily. She had simply relied on skill, awareness, and calm authority. It was a lesson in strength, one that would stay with the patrons of the bar for a long time. Her mind was clear, her body relaxed, yet alert. She had faced aggression and responded appropriately, protecting herself and maintaining peace. That combination of confidence, training, and composure was not just a skill, but a way of life for her. It allowed her to navigate the world without fear, to command respect quietly, and to handle challenges efficiently, whether in a bar or elsewhere. And so, the night ended with a quiet victory. The woman's presence had changed the bar, her actions had taught a lesson, and her calm authority had left a lasting impression. People would remember the night not for the slap, not for the biker's arrogance, but for the courage, control, and quiet power of one woman who refused to be intimidated. The tension in the bar had shifted completely. Patrons who had initially thought it was going to be a typical Friday night brawl now realized they were witnessing something far more unusual. The woman, calm yet alert, had not just absorbed the slap. She had shown control, poise, and strength that immediately commanded respect. The biker who had tried to assert dominance now seemed unsure of himself, He glanced at his friends, who gave nervous, uncertain looks, and realized that things were no longer in his hands. For a moment, everyone in the bar simply stared. The music seemed quieter now. The laughter faded, and the clinking of glasses had slowed as if the room itself held its breath. No one moved too quickly, not wanting to disrupt the fragile balance that had been established. Even the bartender, experienced in handling rowdy crowds and drunken aggression, watched closely, sensing that the next few moments would determine how the night unfolded. The biker tried to regain his confidence. He straightened his back, squared his shoulders, and attempted to look as threatening as he had before. "You think you're tough, huh?" he said, his voice sharper this time, filled with forced bravado. His friends tensed beside him, unsure if they should intervene or let him handle the situation alone. The woman didn't react immediately. She let him speak, her calm gaze fixed on him, unflinching, unafraid. "Do you want to do this the easy way or the hard way?" he demanded, leaning slightly closer. Thinking that intimidation might finally work, patrons shifted nervously, some murmuring to each other, anticipating what might come next. The woman took a slow breath, steadying herself not because she was afraid but because she was preparing to respond with precision. She had been trained to handle situations like this. She knew that acting impulsively could escalate unnecessarily, and her goal was to neutralize the threat efficiently. Instead of reacting with anger or aggression, she calmly stood from her stool, her movements deliberate and measured. Every eye in the bar followed her. Her presence alone seemed to expand the space around her, giving her control without needing to make a sound. The biker's bravado faltered slightly. He had expected a reaction, yelling, pleading, or fear, but none came. What he saw instead was confidence, discipline, and readiness. The woman took a step forward, careful but assertive. She didn't rush. She didn't swing or strike. Her posture, her focus, and her steady gaze made it clear that she was not going to be an easy target. The biker, sensing this, tried to backpedal slightly, but the alcohol and his own ego made him hesitate. He wanted to show control, but deep down he was uncertain. For the first time that night, he felt a measure of respect and unease. Then she acted. With a swift, controlled motion, she grabbed his wrist again, twisting it behind his back. The movement was precise, efficient, and non-violent enough to avoid serious harm, but firm enough to convey authority. The biker struggled for a moment, shocked by the speed and strength she displayed. He had thought he was stronger, but she had proven that skill, composure, and timing often outweighed raw power. The bar erupted in whispers. Patrons leaned closer, some holding their drinks cautiously, unsure if they should intervene, others simply amazed at what they were seeing. A few people whispered about the woman's background, piecing together that she might have military training or some form of professional combat experience. They noticed her calmness, her awareness, and the way she controlled the situation, without escalating it unnecessarily. It was clear she had been in tense, high-pressure situations before. The woman spoke again, her voice steady, clear, and commanding. "Leave now," she said. "Walk out of here and no one needs to get hurt." Her tone carried authority without aggression. There was no shouting, no threats, yet her words had weight. The biker's friends tensed. They had never seen him confronted in this way, and the woman's presence made them hesitate. They were witnessing a display of control and courage they hadn't expected from someone who had seemed like a quiet, ordinary patron. The biker struggled for another moment but realized resistance was futile. His attempts to free himself were weak compared to her precision. She didn't need to hurt him to make her point. Her control and composure were enough to command respect. Finally, he released a frustrated laugh, more out of embarrassment than bravado, and allowed her to step back. His friends muttered excuses, nudging him to leave the bar quietly. Even as they backed away, the woman didn't move aggressively toward them. She didn't need to. Her calm, controlled posture continued to convey authority. Patrons started whispering to each other, amazed at the way she had handled the confrontation. Some expressed admiration for her courage, some for her skill, and others simply for the way she maintained composure in such a tense moment. The bar slowly returned to a quieter rhythm. The biker and his friends left, their arrogance replaced with nervous energy. Patrons resumed their conversations, but there was a new sense of awareness in the room. People glanced at each other, nodding subtly, silently acknowledging what had just occurred. The woman returned to her stool, sitting as if nothing had happened. her calm demeanor contrasting sharply with the chaos that had threatened to erupt moments before. She finished her drink slowly, her movements deliberate, aware of the eyes that still watched her. Some patrons approached cautiously, offering nods or quiet words of admiration. She responded politely but without seeking attention. Her focus remained on herself and her surroundings, a soldier's awareness still fully engaged. The bar had witnessed a display of courage, control, and skill that left a lasting impression on everyone present. The bartender shook his head slightly, impressed. He had seen many fights in his time, but this was different. No one had been hurt unnecessarily. No one had needed to be restrained with violence. The woman had handled the situation efficiently, calmly, and with authority that was both natural and commanding. Her presence reminded everyone that strength did not always have to be loud or aggressive. Sometimes the quiet, controlled response was more powerful than force. People in the bar continued to whisper about the incident. Some speculated about her background, some commented on her composure, and others simply marveled at the confidence she displayed. Her actions had sent a clear message. Intimidation and aggression would not work against someone trained to respond with control, intelligence, and precision. She had neutralized a potentially dangerous situation without escalating it unnecessarily. As the night wore on, the energy in the bar shifted. Patrons returned to their drinks and conversations, but the story of the confrontation spread quickly. People told friends, recounted the events online, and shared the tale with anyone who would listen. The woman's actions became a lesson in courage, respect, and calm authority. She had faced aggression head-on and responded in a way that maintained peace while asserting her own boundaries clearly and effectively. Even the bartender, who had served hundreds of patrons over the years, reflected on what had happened. He realized that true strength often goes unnoticed until tested. He saw firsthand how composure, intelligence, and training could diffuse a situation that might otherwise have ended in chaos. He admired the woman not just for her physical capability, but for the way she maintained control, assessed the situation, and acted decisively without losing her calm. The woman eventually left the bar, stepping into the cool night air with the same calm confidence she had displayed inside. Her steps were steady, purposeful, and measured. She walked away without needing recognition or applause. The respect she had earned was evident in the way the patrons watched her leave, silently acknowledging the lesson she had imparted without needing to say a word. As she disappeared down the street, the memory of her presence lingered. Patrons continued to talk about her for weeks, telling the story to friends and family. The woman had transformed what could have been a moment of humiliation and aggression into one of respect and admiration. She had shown that courage, discipline, and composure could command attention and change the energy of an entire room. The night had tested her, and she had passed with grace. She had confronted aggression not with anger, but with intelligence and skill. She had shown that strength is not always about force, but about control, awareness, and the courage to act when necessary. Her actions left a lasting impression on everyone present, a reminder that underestimating someone based on appearances can lead to unexpected consequences. By the time the bar closed, the story of the evening had already become part of the local lore. Patrons who had witnessed the event replayed it in their minds, amazed at the woman's ability to face confrontation calmly and effectively. She had turned a potentially dangerous encounter into a display of courage and composure that would be remembered long after she was gone. And though she had left, her impact remained. The bar had been changed by her presence. Her actions had taught a lesson, and the patrons had learned that true strength often comes quietly, measured and deliberate, but no less powerful. The woman had faced aggression head-on, responded with precision, and commanded respect without ever needing to raise her voice. She had shown that courage is not always loud, but it is always noticed by those who witness it. The bar slowly returned to its usual rhythm, but the energy in the room had changed. Patrons were quieter than before, talking in hushed tones and glancing occasionally at the woman who had handled the confrontation. She had returned to her stool, calm and collected, sipping her drink as if nothing had happened, but everyone who saw her knew better. They had witnessed a display of courage and control that would not be forgotten quickly. The music played, but it seemed softer, almost respectful, as though the room itself had taken a moment to acknowledge what had just occurred. Some patrons gathered in small groups, whispering to each other about what had happened. "Did you see how calm she was?" one said, shaking their head. "I've never seen anyone handle a situation like that without shouting or hitting back." Another added, "You could tell she knew what she was doing. That wasn't just luck, it was training." The whispers spread quickly, moving from table to table. Everyone wanted to understand how someone could remain so calm in the face of aggression. Even the bartender felt a shift in the atmosphere. He had been serving drinks for years and had seen his fair share of fights and arguments. He knew how quickly situations could spiral out of control, but tonight had been different. The woman had handled the confrontation with a rare blend of confidence, awareness, and composure. She had not needed to escalate the situation or rely on brute force. She had simply stood her ground, acted decisively, and restored order without creating more chaos. A few regulars approached her quietly, curiosity shining in their eyes. "Are you military?" one asked hesitantly. She gave a small, polite nod. "Yes," she said simply. She didn't elaborate, didn't boast, and didn't seek attention. Her goal had never been to impress anyone. It had been to protect herself and maintain control. But her calm and composed demeanor, combined with her precise actions, had left a deep impression on everyone present. People began to admire her not only for her strength, but also for her discipline and self-control. "I can't believe he thought he could intimidate her," someone whispered. She didn't even raise her voice. She just handled it. Another added, "It's amazing how calm she stayed. Most people would have lost it after being slapped like that." The bar was buzzing with a mixture of awe, respect, and disbelief. The woman's actions had made everyone rethink what it meant to be strong and courageous. The biker and his friends had left quietly, heads down, muttering apologies that went largely unheard. Their failed attempt at intimidation had become a lesson for everyone who had witnessed it. Even without her saying much, the woman had made it clear that aggression would not be tolerated. Her presence alone commanded respect, and the bar patrons could feel the difference. The room had been transformed from a place of potential conflict to one where awareness, composure, and courage had been highlighted. Some patrons returned to their drinks, but others remained engaged, discussing the evening's events in low voices. "I've never seen anyone react so perfectly under pressure," one said. "It's like she expected it and knew exactly how to respond." Another person nodded. "She didn't make it about revenge or humiliation. She just made it about control and respect." The lesson was clear. True strength could be quiet, measured, and deliberate. It didn't need to be loud or aggressive to be powerful. The bartender kept glancing at her, impressed by her composure. He had witnessed moments like this before, but rarely with such precision and control. She had diffused a potentially violent situation with nothing more than awareness, confidence, and skill. He quietly told himself that this was the kind of courage he wanted to remember, the kind that didn't seek attention but earned respect effortlessly. Meanwhile, other patrons began to piece together the woman's background. Some guessed she was military. Others thought perhaps she had trained in martial arts or self-defense. Everyone could see the discipline in her movements, the way she assessed the situation before acting, and the calm focus in her eyes. She didn't need to explain herself. Her actions spoke louder than any words could. Children and younger patrons who had been watching closely were especially impressed. They had seen her face aggression without fear and had learned in a silent but profound way that courage wasn't about fighting or shouting. It was about knowing your strength, understanding your abilities, and acting when necessary. The impact of her presence would likely stay with them far longer than the night itself. The woman took a slow breath, letting herself relax slightly. She had handled the situation and it was over. But her awareness didn't fade completely. She remained observant, noting the way people reacted, the energy in the room, and the subtle ways the bar had shifted around her. She had not only protected herself, but had influenced the environment, leaving a quiet but powerful mark on everyone present. Some patrons approached her again, more confident this time, wanting to express respect and curiosity. "I just want to say, that was incredible," one said. "You didn't just defend yourself, you did it with so much control. It's inspiring." She smiled politely but didn't linger on praise. "Thank you," she said simply. Her focus was not on recognition, but on maintaining her own composure and awareness. Her humility only added to the respect she earned from those around her. Others began to reflect on the event more deeply. Conversations shifted from casual bar talk to discussions about courage, discipline, and respect. Patrons discussed what they had learned from watching her, how they could apply composure in their own lives, and how appearances could be deceiving. Many realized that someone who seemed ordinary at first glance could possess extraordinary strength, courage, and skill. The biker and his friends, now outside, reflected on their own actions. The humiliation of being outmatched in a public space was a bitter lesson. They hadn't faced just physical strength. They had faced awareness, intelligence, and control. The woman had shown them that aggression without skill or understanding could backfire, and that true courage often came quietly without the need for boasting. Inside the bar, the story began to grow in the minds of the patrons. Some would recount it to friends, others would share it online, and many would remember the evening for years. It wasn't just a story about a slap or a confrontation. It was a story about courage, composure, and the quiet power of someone who knew her own strength and used it wisely. The woman eventually stood to leave. She moved with the same calm confidence she had shown all evening. Patrons watched her leave, some quietly applauding, others nodding in silent respect. She didn't need recognition, but she received it anyway simply because her actions had spoken for themselves. Her presence had changed the atmosphere of the bar, leaving a lesson in courage, respect, and composure that everyone present would remember. As she walked out into the night, the air cool against her skin, she felt a sense of calm satisfaction. She had faced aggression and responded appropriately, protecting herself while maintaining order. She had shown that strength did not need to be loud or violent to be effective, and that composure and intelligence could be more powerful than raw aggression. The patrons inside the bar continued to discuss her quietly, the story already becoming a part of local lore. People spoke of her courage, her skill, and her ability to influence a room without raising her voice or resorting to unnecessary violence. The lesson of the evening had become clear. Underestimating someone based on appearances could lead to unexpected consequences, and true strength was often measured in calmness, awareness, and courage. Even as the night drew to a close, the memory of the confrontation remained vivid. Patrons left the bar with a new perspective, thinking about courage, discipline, and respect in ways they hadn't before. The woman had not only defended herself, she had taught everyone present an unspoken lesson about strength, composure, and the quiet power of confidence. The bar's usual noise and chaos would eventually return, but the impression she had left would linger. Patrons would retell the story, sharing the details of her calm authority, the way she had neutralized a threatening situation, and the subtle but powerful way she had commanded respect. The woman had shown that courage was not always loud or aggressive, and that true strength could quietly influence everyone around it. By the time the bar emptied and the night came to an end, the story of the woman and the biker had already taken on a life of its own. Patrons would carry the memory forward, inspired by her actions and the lessons she had demonstrated. She had faced aggression without fear, acted with precision, and left a lasting impression on everyone who witnessed her composure and courage. Walking away, she felt neither pride nor arrogance. She had acted as she needed to, protecting herself and maintaining peace. The night had tested her, and she had met the challenge with calm authority. Her actions had been noticed, respected, and admired, not for the sake of recognition, but because true strength has a way of making itself felt even without fanfare. The story of that night would be told and retold, not as a tale of conflict but as a testament to courage, control, and quiet power. Patrons would remember the way she had faced aggression with calm, measured action, and how her composure had changed the energy of the entire bar. She had shown that true strength is not always seen in the heat of a fight, but in the way someone carries themselves, reacts under pressure, and commands respect without a word. The night had finally quieted. The bar, which had been filled with laughter, music, and tension, now hummed with a softer, more reflective energy. Patrons nursed their drinks, some talking in small groups, others lost in thought. The incident with the biker and the woman had left its mark on everyone present. It was a story that would be told again and again, not for drama, but as a lesson in courage, respect, and quiet strength. Even as people laughed and chatted, there was an undercurrent of awareness that the world could be unpredictable, and sometimes courage came in the form of calm control rather than loud confrontation. The woman had left the bar some time ago, stepping into the night with the same composed confidence she had carried all evening. She walked down the street with steady, deliberate steps, her mind clear, her body relaxed yet alert. She wasn't thinking about the story she would leave behind, nor about how people perceived her. She simply moved with awareness and self-assurance, knowing that she had done what was necessary. The cool air brushed against her skin and she breathed in deeply, feeling the calm after the storm. Back in the bar, the patrons began to reflect on what had just happened. Conversations shifted from casual topics to deeper discussions. People spoke about courage, about the way the woman had faced aggression without fear, and about the lesson of controlling one's emotions under pressure. "I can't believe how calm she was," one said quietly. "Most people would have panicked or yelled, but she didn't. She just handled it." Another added, "It's amazing how strength doesn't always have to be about fighting. Sometimes it's about control, awareness, and knowing what to do at the right moment." The bartender, having watched the entire event unfold, thought about the lessons he had just witnessed. He had seen many fights and confrontations in his years, but none had left him with such a clear example of courage and discipline. He reflected on how rare it was to see someone act decisively, with authority and yet without aggression. The woman had done more than defend herself. She had demonstrated the kind of composure and presence that commanded respect effortlessly. Some patrons began sharing their own experiences. They spoke quietly about moments when they had faced challenges, arguments, or conflicts, and how difficult it could be to remain calm. The story of the woman became a point of inspiration. People discussed how courage could be subtle, how strength could be quiet, and how respect could be earned through intelligence, discipline, and self-awareness. The evening had given them more than a tale of confrontation. It had given them a lesson in life. The biker and his friends had left, humiliated and reflective. The experience was a bitter reminder that arrogance and aggression could backfire when met with composure and skill. They realized that strength was not just physical. It was mental, emotional, and disciplined. They had underestimated the woman completely, and the lesson would stay with them far longer than the embarrassment. Even as they walked away, they could not shake the memory of her calm authority, her unwavering focus, and the way she had turned a dangerous situation into one of respect and control. In the days that followed, the story of that night spread. Patrons recounted the events to friends, family, and co-workers. Social media posts shared the tale of the woman who had faced aggression calmly and decisively. The story was not sensationalized or exaggerated. It was celebrated for its demonstration of courage, composure, and the quiet power of self-assurance. People admired how she had acted with intelligence, not anger, and how she had ensured that no one was harmed unnecessarily. The woman herself did not seek recognition. She continued with her life as before, quietly aware of the lessons she had imparted without needing to explain herself. She had acted as she always did, calmly, deliberately, and responsibly. She knew the value of awareness, the importance of discipline, and the power of courage in its purest form. And while she did not dwell on the story, she understood that her actions had a lasting impact on those who witnessed them. Some patrons returned to the bar, telling newcomers about the night. They spoke not only of the confrontation but of the way the woman had handled it. People admired the way she maintained control, the way she projected confidence, and the way she influenced the room without needing to raise her voice or use aggression. The story became a quiet legend, a point of inspiration for anyone who heard it. The woman's actions also prompted others to reflect on their own behavior. Some thought about times when they had faced challenges and how they might have handled them differently. Some considered moments of fear, frustration, or anger, and how composure could have changed the outcome. The story encouraged people to think about courage in a different way, not as something loud or violent, but as something measured, controlled, and deeply confident. For the bar itself, the incident became part of its identity. Patrons who returned often mentioned it, telling new visitors about the night when a woman had faced aggression with calm authority. It was a story that reminded people to respect others, to think before acting, and to recognize that appearances could be deceiving. The bar, once just another place to drink and socialize, had become a place of reflection and inspiration. Thanks to one person's courage and composure, the woman continued her life with the same awareness she had always carried. She trained, worked, and lived with discipline, always prepared for situations that might arise. She did not seek attention, but she understood that courage and skill naturally inspired respect. Her actions had demonstrated that strength was not about showing off or dominating others. It was about being prepared, remaining calm under pressure, and acting decisively when necessary. In the weeks and months that followed, patrons of the bar continued to talk about her. Some had witnessed it firsthand. Others had heard the story secondhand, but the impact was the same. People admired the lesson she had imparted, that courage could be quiet, that composure was powerful, and that respect was earned through awareness, skill, and integrity. The story became a touchstone for those who valued intelligence, self-control, and the quiet strength that comes from experience. Even the biker, months later, remembered the night vividly. He had underestimated her, and the lesson had stayed with him. It was not just a memory of humiliation, but a memory of a person who embodied courage, discipline, and self-control. He had learned that aggression could be dangerous when faced with someone prepared, aware, and confident. That night had changed how he approached confrontation, even in small ways, and the lesson would remain with him for years. For the patrons who had witnessed the event, the memory lingered as well. They spoke of it with admiration, respect, and sometimes awe. They recalled the calmness, the precision, and the quiet power the woman had displayed. They discussed how her actions had shifted the energy of the room, how she had influenced the atmosphere without violence, and how her courage had inspired them to think differently about strength and confrontation. The bar, over time, became known not just for drinks or music, but for the story of that night. Patrons returned, eager to share the tale, to reflect on the lessons, and to remember the quiet courage of a woman who had faced aggression and responded with composure, intelligence, and authority. Her actions had transformed a simple night out into a lesson in courage, respect, and self-assurance that would not be forgotten. As for the woman, she moved through life with quiet confidence, aware of her abilities but humble in her approach. She knew that courage was not about dominance or recognition, but about understanding oneself, assessing situations, and acting decisively when necessary. She had demonstrated that strength was not always loud, that respect could be earned without force, and that composure in the face of aggression was a power few truly understood. Her impact extended beyond that night in the bar. The lessons she imparted continued to influence everyone who had witnessed her actions. People reflected on their own lives, thinking about how they could approach challenges with calm authority, rather than fear or anger. They recognized that courage was often quiet, that discipline and awareness were invaluable, and that true strength came from confidence, preparation, and the ability to act decisively when it mattered most. The night had started like any other, loud, crowded, and filled with potential conflict, but it had ended with a lesson that resonated far beyond the bar. The woman's courage, composure, and skill had left an indelible mark on everyone who witnessed it. Patrons would continue to recount the story, admire her actions, and reflect on the deeper message of strength, awareness, and respect. Even as the months passed, the story remained vivid in the minds of those who had been there. People would think back to the calm, composed figure who had faced aggression with intelligence and precision. They remembered the way she had shifted the energy of the room, the way she had earned respect effortlessly, and the way she had taught a lesson in courage without needing to raise her voice. In the end, the woman's actions were more than a defense. They were a demonstration of what it meant to be truly strong. Her courage, calm authority, and awareness left a lasting impression that went far beyond a single night. She had shown that true strength was measured not just by physical ability, but by composure, intelligence, and the courage to act when necessary. Her story became a quiet legend remembered not for violence or conflict, but for the power of calm courage, discipline, and respect. Patrons of the bar, the biker, and anyone who heard the tale learned that appearances could be deceiving, that courage,